Welcome. I'm Nate Miller. This is the Beer and Bellator show, where we like two things, beer and Bellator. If you ever checked out my first show, the beer of the week is Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserve, so head down to the LC and grab yourself some Henry Weinhardt's Private Reserve. But today, a lot more business going down. We're going to be breaking down Bellator 98. Obviously, injuries have changed around. Some of the bouts, such as Doug Marshall got hurt, so Brett Cooper was brought up for the title shot. Even coming off of a loss because it's Bellator's new tournament replacement clause. It's the very first time they had to use it. It's kind of convenient that they just made it right as it happens. Also, Dan Kramer out with citing an eye injury, saying he damaged his retina or something with the Brett Cooper fight, so he will not be competing in this tournament. And couple of new faces, if you've been around, you should remember them. But we don't have much time to waste. We're going to get right into it and try and make some money. There's a couple of good lines. I like some dogs on the card, but without any more hesitation, here's your Bellator breakdown. The first middleweight tournament bout being Jason Butcher versus Jivas Santana. This is an epic ground war of super proportions. If you don't know who Jason Butcher is yet, you got to look him up. In our last show, I actually named him our dark horse at the tournament. He comes in with a record of 6-0. He's the underdog at plus 140, as I expected him to be. He's coming up against Jivas Santana, who's a Damian Maia level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. His nickname is actually the Arm Collector, having collected 15 victories by armbar out of his 18 wins. He comes in with a record of 18-2. He is the favorite at negative 180, and I can see why. He's definitely a force to be reckoned with, but he is getting up there in years. I believe he's almost 40. Been in the game for quite a while, and he is not necessarily a one-trick pony. You might not think of him as completely a submission fighter, but he does have good striking. But I do see him getting outworked, maybe out-wrestled by Jason Butcher, who might use his jiu-jitsu for defensive purposes, so considering that bet. Next tournament bout is Brian the Predator Rogers versus Mikel Parlo. This is going to be a good one, mainly because Brian Rogers in it. He's never in a boring fight. Coming in with a record of 10-5, he's actually at even money with Mikel Parlo, which is surprising. I know that Brian Rogers has had a rough run in Bellator. He's on a win-loss run, and none of his fights are ever boring. He's very different in his striking, and Mikel Parlo, he came into Bellator with an 8-0 record and has since gone 1-1 in the promotion, being at even money. Mikel Parlo does have very good hands, very good striking, but he is a one-trick pony. He got out-wrestled by Aliev, and Brian Rogers, if he fights smart, does have excellent judo throws, terrific striking, and should win. The next one being Justin Torrey versus Andreas Spang. This is another interesting one when the line came out where it wasn't quite where I thought it would be. Justin Torrey, currently 2-0 in Bellator. He is a striker. He's his total record 7-0. 6 of his victories have come by way of knockout. He's the favorite at negative 135, and I think it's just the new face with Andreas Spang, who with a record of 8-3. He's actually the underdog at negative 105. I like Spang in this fight. He's got a great chin. He's got a great ground game. Justin Torrey has never really fought anybody of significance, and I really do see Spang winning on the feet, or if it does go to the ground, having a tremendous advantage. Spang doesn't have the best wrestling, but he does have good, solid jiu-jitsu and can maintain back control very well. Jeremy Kimball versus Perry Filkins. I know that most casual fans don't know who either of these guys are, but this should be a good one. I was actually fairly surprised to see that Jeremy Kimball came out as the favorite. He is fairly well-rounded, decent striking, decent wrestling. Not great anywhere, but good everywhere. He comes with a record of 10-3. He is actually a big favorite at negative 215, which surprised me. If you go on YouTube and you look up some highlights from Perry Filkins is an absolute killer. He comes with a record of 7-1. He's the underdog at plus 165. He's got tremendous power on the feet, and his ground and pound is absolutely ruthless. I definitely like Perry in this fight. Not exactly putting a tremendous amount of money on it, but the value as a dog definitely makes it worth a look. Next, we have the first Season 9 Bantamweight tournament bout. This is a 4-man tournament. We got Nick Kirk versus former featherweight champion Joe Warren. Nick Kirk, he's coming in with a record of 10-2. He is a tremendous underdog, the biggest on the card at plus 600. He's a bit more of a grinder. He's well-rounded, but he tends to win by decision, which isn't a very good way to win a fight when you're going against Joe Warren. Comes in with a record of 8-3, the biggest favorite on the card at negative 1,200. I do think this line is ridiculous. I know that Warren was going to be a heavy favorite, but this is a tremendous line. I think this is where it should have ended by fight time, not where it should have started. But like I said, Kirk being a grinder, coming in, really trying to outwork his opponent, not a good strategy for Joe Warren. Joe Warren's a great wrestler. He's a former champion. He's going to be trying to be the second man to win a tournament in 2 weight classes and the first to win a championship in 2 weight classes in Bellator, so one to watch. And the main event of the evening, the middleweight championship, Brett Cooper versus Alexander Shlemenko. This is actually a rematch. The first fight was fairly closely contested. Cooper was able to utilize some wrestling and some combos. He even ate some spinning back fists like a champ. And it was a very close fight, but Alexander did win fairly clearly. Brett Cooper coming in with a record of 8-19-8. He is a second largest dog on the card at plus 415, which I thought was a little high for how close the fight was. But then you have Alexander Shlemenko with a tremendous record of 47-7. He's the second largest favorite on the card at negative 635. And I'm not that outraged by this. You know, Brett Cooper coming off of a knockout loss, a brutal knockout loss, and rematching a guy who's already beat him. It's not very feasible for him to win this, but you know, I do predict Shlemenko to utilize his spinning attacks, his tremendous unorthodox striking. It's going to be very entertaining. Not to mention how much his wrestling has improved since their first fight. So this should be a fairly good one to watch. I am looking forward to it, but definitely sticking with Shlemenko on this. And just to sum up our bet totals here, we're going to be playing a couple of dogs. Our first bet, obviously, Jason Butcher plus 140. I definitely think he can out-wrestle Jiva Santana. Next up, Filkins plus 165. I definitely give him the advantage in this. This is purely value. Followed by a Spang, negative 105. Really, I'm surprised to even see him as an underdog. I think this is a great price. And then also finally Rogers at negative plus 120 or negative 120. That's actually even money right there. Another value bet. And then I have one parlay where I'm putting Shlemenko, Warren, Spang, and Rogers at plus 349. That's actually my smallest play of the day. And actually, for fun, if you wanted to, I won't be doing it simply based on risk factor, but you can put Rogers and Spang at plus 258 if you feel strongly against Warren or Shlemenko. But those are my bets. Besides that, the Fight Master finale was supposed to be on this card, but apparently Joe Rigg has got a toe in his eye somehow and is pulled from the card, so that's no longer. But besides that, still some great fights, still some money to be made, and a lot of entertainment. Great way to start Season 9. And with that, I ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all my content distributors between the MMAmovement.com, the MMAanalysis.com, and the MMA Report. They all put out my stuff. And thanks for checking us out. If you haven't seen the first episode of the Beer and Bellator show, be sure to check that out. Besides that, enjoy the fights, guys. Be safe. Thanks for listening.